Celebrity author and therapist Rabbi Boteach shows how to use the power of self-talk to reach your full potential. Some of the most effective talk therapy is self-talk therapy, learning to connect positively with that internal voice that serves as your own personal GPS to guide you through life. Rabbi Shmuley teaches the reader to reconnect with the inner voice of conscience, the source of personal dreams and values, which has been so drowned out by the noise of a culture that emphasizes form over substance, career over calling, and consumption over conviction. Drawing on Rabbi Shmuley's extensive counseling experience, this book helps you defeat negative self-talk and strengthen your positive inner voices of inspiration, conscience, and deepest self to help you move forward and live your truest life. Filled with dramatic real-life examples and practical exercises, it guides you through the 10 most important and life-changing conversations you will ever have. Shows how to use the art of conversation and self-reflection to turn negative self-talk into positive self-talk and improve your life. Includes dramatic stories from Boteach's own counseling work and practical self-improvement exercises. Covers important life issues such as love, self-esteem, success, and fear of aging. From the star of TLC's television series Shalom in the Home and author of 10 Conversations You Need to Have with Your Children and other books. Start the conversation today and you'll find the voice of inspiration, the motivation to make the right choices in your life, and the ability to be true to your innermost self. Shows how to use the art of conversation and self-reflection to turn negative self-talk into positive self-talk and improve your life. Includes dramatic stories from Boteach's own counseling work and practical self-improvement exercises. Covers important life issues such as love, self-esteem, success, and fear of aging. Includes bibliographical references and index.
We are the Ministry of the Real Truth, and this is the book by Shmuley Boteach titled 10 Conversations You Need to Have with Yourself, a Powerful Plan for Spiritual Growth and Self-Improvement. Read along with us. We'll enlarge it for you so you can see it on your screen. There is some information on the inside jacket. Everybody's talking at us in today's world. We are bombarded by voices from the outside that tell us everything from how beautiful, thin, and successful we could be to how frightened and angry we should feel. It's easy to internalize this constant bombardment of negative, agenda-driven noise. When we let them in, these voices can skew our self-image and clash with our personal dreams and values, causing depression, anxiety, workplace issues, family problems, and more. Worse, the cacophony of sound from the modern world can drown out the interior voice of conscience that serves as our inner navigation system. It doesn't have to be that way. 10 conversations you need to have with yourself. Take self-talk to a whole new level. Best-selling author and counselor Rabbi Shmuley Boteach explains how internalized negative voices can pull you away from who you really are and reveal what you can do to rediscover your authentic self and find genuine happiness via guided conversations with yourself. Drawing on dramatic true stories from his work counseling others, he helps you recognize negative self-talk and replace it with positive communication with the real you. The 10 conversations Rabbi Shmuley identifies and explores in this book will speak to your character on the deepest level and help you decide what you truly want from life. With Rabbi Shmuley's guidance, you will discover and learn to listen to your true voice of inspiration, which motivates you to be a greater person than you ever believed possible. By speaking with this voice, you will learn to choose love over attention and make use of your ego for positive change. Your voice of conscience which gives you the power to choose to do what is right over what comes easiest. In conversations with this voice, you will learn how to find feeling through doing and become a blessing rather than a burden. And it's continued on the back flap. So we're going to go through a time warp and go there. Okay, it's actually the back of the book. We might go back one just to see if there is something there. Aha, here we go. Continue from front flap. Your inner self, the deepest voice of all, the essence of who you really are. This voice will remind you of the importance of struggle and triumph and the knowledge of your own individual gift. At the end of each conversation, Rabbi Shmuley, Pitchett, provides detailed questions for you to ask yourself. Answering them will help you to create your own personal design for living the way you were meant to live and be the person you were truly meant to be. I need some information on Rabbi Shmuley Boteach, an internationally prominent spiritual leader, counselor, and best-selling author. His previous books include 10 Conversations You Need to Have with Your Children, Kosher Sex, and the Kosher Sutra. He starred in the TLC series Shalom in the Home, hosted the Shmuley Show on Oprah and Friends, and appears regularly on the Today Show, Fox News Channel, CNN, and WABC Radio. A syndicated columnist, he writes regularly for the Huffington Post, the Wall Street Journal, the Jerusalem Post, BeliefNet, and many other publications and websites. He was voted the London Times Preacher of the Year and is the winner of the National Fatherhood Award and the American Jewish Press Association's highest award for excellence in commentary. There we go. Walk all the way back. 10 Conversations You Need to Have with Yourself, a powerful plan for spiritual growth and self-improvement by Rabbi Shmuley Boteach. To two great men who have walked with me through a long and challenging path, Michael Steinhardt, mega philanthropist of Judaism and worthy causes globally, devoted friend, guide and counselor who serves as my wise inner voice, inspiring me to be a better, more devoted Jew and human being. David Slager, student, disciple, teacher, supporter and friend whose humility, dedication and uber generosity to Jewish causes worldwide and to the teachings and works of our great Rebbe in particular, as well as to my own, or the author's own, modest efforts, never cease to inspire or amaze. Contents page. Continued. Acknowledgements. He thanks his former publisher, etc. Finally, to the Creator of heaven and earth, God Almighty, what can he say? Does he deserve all the blessings he's been given, Lord? A wife who loves him, 9 healthy children, whoa, got a lot of children, thank God, enough food for all to eat, a meaningful calling that he can pursue that endows his life with purpose. He's not sure, but probably not, which makes it a free gift due to your grace, Lord, for which the author was forever grateful. And he hopes to always use your blessings. He hopes to always use your blessings so to spread your glory and truth here on earth. May he always be worthy of your comforting, guiding presence. May we all. Introduction. Readers have noticed the death of conversation. Not only does the average person's vocabulary shrink year after year, severely limiting our ability to express ourselves, but we live in a culture where people do much more passive listening than active speaking. Whether it's listening to the TV, a movie, the radio, or an iPod, we absorb far more than we impart. If William Safire was correct in his argument that the telephone killed off the art of writing, then texting and email killed off the telephone in turn. In the end, the primary culprit is the superficiality of modern culture. Real conversation is something that swells up from within. Only people who are in touch with their deepest convictions and emotions can communicate authentic thoughts and feelings to others. No wonder satisfying conversations is so rare these days. And 10 Conversations you need to have with your children, the author attempted to inspire parents to share their deep convictions, imparting cherished values and beliefs to their children. Now in this book, the second in the series, the author asks you to do something even more difficult: to know yourself, to plumb the depths of your being, and to become self-aware. He challenges you to do that rarest of things, to live an examined life. In the method you will use to achieve that goal, simply engage in penetrating conversations with yourself. What's that, you say? People who talk to themselves are crazy? Well, perhaps that's true if they do so out loud, in the belief that they're actually talking to someone else. Speaking silently and sincerely to yourself, however, is a different story entirely. If you define a crazy person as someone who lives a deluded life, then not talking to yourself is the surest way to lose your sanity. Those who have no self-awareness, who go through life blind to their motivations, their nature, and their soul-searing secrets, these are the people who live with fraudulent versions of themselves. They end up becoming people they never planned to be. The author has met individuals like this all of the time. One day, Gary and Lisa came in for marital counselling after Gary, a successful businessman who owned a string of video stores, concluded a year-long affair with another woman. The author asked Gary, "Why did you want to have an affair?" "Easy," he said, looking at him contemptuously. "Sex, that's all." "What, don't you get it?" "What don't you get?" "But in that case," the author asked him, "couldn't you just have had sex with your wife?" And he replied, "I guess I wanted some sex with someone new." "Then why did you have sex with the same mistress for a full year, Gary?" At this, he was stumped. Here was a man who had mastered his business but had gained not even a hint of self-mastery. Somewhere along the line, he ceased to know himself. On another occasion, a married woman named Marianne came to him alone to discuss her marriage. As they talked, she revealed that she had been conducting a series of affairs. And she stated, "I'm searching for something I don't have in my marriage," she said. "I deserve to be loved." It's true that Marianne was seeking something, but because she no longer heard the voice of her conscience, she did not know what. She couldn't identify what that was. Rather than engage in conversations with herself, she gave into instinct and impulse. She began as an erotic adventurer, but ended as a lonely wanderer. Each of us is born with a unique idea of the kind of person we want to be. This can manifest in two very different ways: visual or audio. On one hand, we see a vision of our future, of something we ought to become. On the other, we hear a voice reminding us of who we really are. A vision usually beckons from the outside, but the voice is always internal. Usually, when people imagine their future, they seek a vision of grandeur. They're the US President disembarking from Air Force One, a movie star walking down the red carpet, a pop artist picking up a Grammy, a dot-com billionaire lecturing at the World Economic Forum in Davos. We've all had daydreams like these, and some of us spend the better part of our lives trying to turn them into realities. Yet we do so at our own peril, because the inner voice often gets left behind in the pursuit of our professional ambitions. From our earliest years, that inner voice whispers to us that we were born for a different kind of greatness. As we grow up, however, we lose track of what we once heard so clearly. As with an old video cassette stored away in a drawer, if we haven't forgotten it completely, then we no longer have the right technology to play it back. Alienated from that initial vision of who we really are, we risk becoming strangers not only to others but also to ourselves. People stripped of their inner voices frequently end up little better than psychological cripples. A man capable of seeing his appearance but not of hearing his heart, a woman who can envision a career trajectory but who is no longer attuned to her unique calling. What does it profit a man to lose his soul and live entirely for profit? Many competing voices in our culture today push us to define individual success by criteria that are often alien to our true selves. Yet, crying out from the depths of our being is one authentic voice that asks us to remain true to ourselves amid the noise that surrounds us. I want you to hear that voice. That's what the author is saying to you. He wants you to hear that voice. Your inner voice serves as your own personal GPS, guiding you through the byways of life. It resembles a radio station you must tune into amid so many competing frequencies. Countless other stations clutter the airwaves and distract us by transmitting their own messages. A cultural voice, an economic voice, a religious voice. Hollywood station tells us that life is all about glitz and glamour. The Wall Street station broadcasts that the good life is determined by the quantity of money in your bank account, rather than by the quality of your relationships. And when your own personal voice is drowned out in the ruckus of a clamouring ego, you simply go astray. In US history, one person who started listening to the wrong voice was Jefferson Davis, the President of the Confederacy. Once regarded as a great patriot, he fought and was wounded in the Mexican-American War, earning the nickname the Hero of Buena Vista. After valiantly defending the United States, he served as a senator for the state of Mississippi and even argued, for a time, against secession from the Union. Early in his life, Davis heard a calling to be forever loyal to his nation. His inner voice told him that he had to serve its ideals of liberty and freedom. But then another voice insinuated its way into his consciousness. The voice of Southern bellicosity, proclaiming states' sovereignty. This new voice spoke to him so loudly that the former hero didn't realize that the principal consequences would be to prolong the evil of slavery. The outcome was tragic. A great patriot was transformed into a rebel who rose up against his own nation simply to keep God's children in chains. In the present day, life without an inner voice can be difficult indeed. The author once counseled a man named Marty who had lost track of his conscience. He ran a successful group of restaurants until the economic downturn, when he rapidly lost almost half of his business. This man, who had once defined himself through his success, began to change overnight. He would scream at his kids and viciously unload on his wife whenever they did the slightest thing wrong. He asked Marty what was bothering him. He shook his head and said to him, "I feel like I've lost my anchor. I'm no longer tethered to any kind of mooring. I lash out at people, punish those closest to me, and I feel like I can't stop myself from abusing others." Immediately, the author knew that Marty was experiencing. His feeling of failure had completely eroded his moral foundation. His actions had no compass. He looked, acted, and felt lost. Counselling in his case meant encouraging him to listen to his inner voice of conscience rather than seek moral direction from another person. He knew that what he was doing was wrong. He simply had to listen to himself in order to stop. This is a sadly common phenomenon. Often when we feel lost, our first reaction is to reach out to people outside ourselves to ask for directions. Some of us, of course, don't even do that, and we all know that men are notorious for not asking for directions. Even for those who do, however, this habit of asking other people for moral direction is exactly what leads to a lifelong dependency on others to navigate the basics of our lives. When God punished the Egyptians with the 10 plagues, the second one was an epidemic of frogs. Why is that so horrible? Because the non-stop ribbit, ribbit, ribbit sound drove them to distraction. Not only that, it was deeply symbolic. The Egyptians had chosen to enslave and oppress a helpless people. They had completely stifled their own inner voice of conscience by listening to the artificial, Nietzschean voice of the will to power. Now the amphibians created even greater noise, stifling the voice of power as well. The method of asking questions is identical to that used thousands of years ago by Socrates. He often walked around the marketplace of Athens and quizzed people about their lives. As simple as this technique was, it was so powerful that it ultimately cost him his life. The rulers of Athens didn't like the idea of people listening to their own conscience. Doing so might have made them aware that they had far fewer rights than they otherwise supposed. Losing touch with our inner voice numbs us to life, makes us indifferent to injustice and utterly dependent on others. The rulers of Athens preferred things that way. They wanted people to rely on them for even the most basic decisions. Contrary to the popular belief that if you talk to yourself, you ought to be locked up, in truth, you're supposed to talk to yourself and question yourself constantly. We are meant to have open lines of communication with what Abraham Lincoln called the better angels of our nature. We need to be on the same frequency as the soul's voice, and we are meant to attune ourselves to the whisperings of something higher. To engage in clarifying inspirational conversations with yourself, it's vital to understand the three healthy sources of our true inner voice. The first source is our inspiration. You'll recognize this as the unrelenting positive voice of motivation, lifting you up and driving you to do what's right. This is the voice that exhorts you to live for something great and not merely greatness, the way that our culture defines it today. If you listen to most forms of media, being rich, powerful and famous are the only valid measures of worth. Unless you're somebody, you're nobody. Yet true greatness comes from an inner voice that calls out, as well as from what Jews call the voice of Sinai. This voice summons us to spiritual greatness and lofty heights by telling us that we should neither squander our lives nor diminish our potential. The second source is our conscience. This is our moral self, the part of us that wants to be decent and good at all times. To help us do the right thing, an inner voice springs forth to guide us along a more righteous path. The third source of our inner voice is our innermost self. The song of the soul deepens our lives, awakening our spirituality and reminding us of who we wish to be. The voice of our inner spirit represents our authenticity. It identifies our unique and incontrovertible gift, the part of us that never wishes to be compromised by hearing a voice that is foreign. It is the last line of defense against the alien voice or the foreign voice, not some voice from a planet, some extraterrestrial. Almost said it. Against the alien voice of the cultured self, which has acquired the often corrosive habits of modern culture. Your soul's voice is your irreducible essence. Taken together, these three sources form a symphony of personal conversation to counteract the cacophony of noise from the outside. Your inner voice is just like your own shifting identity. You can be many things at once to many people. Sometimes the author's sometimes the author's a father, sometimes a husband, other times a friend. Each role is different. He, of course, doesn't admonish his wife as though she were a child, nor does he buddy up to his children as if they are old friends. But the same him, or me, resonates in each part that he plays in life. He has a moral quality, an inspirational quality, and an authentically personal quality. Without all three, he's incomplete. Why is this so important? Because there are so many unhealthy voices vying for our attention. If we don't take control of our inner conversation, we may find ourselves listening to the wrong voice. The author recently counselled, prior to this being printed and published, this book, he recently counselled a couple that had been fighting. David was a technology officer at a bank and his wife Linda was a stay-at-home mom. David's job required him to travel constantly, which put a lot of pressure on Linda, who often had to care for their 3 children alone. To compound her stress, she also had to put up with her own overbearing mother-in-law, Maria. Tensions came to a head on Thanksgiving when Linda had to tell Maria that she couldn't come over to visit her grandkids. The children were sick and Linda was too frazzled to receive any guests. Maria blew a gasket. She blew a fuse. Both she and Linda ended up unloading their anger on David, accusing him in separate emails of neglecting their needs. Imagine the poor man that was setting up a very complex international computing system for the bank, and he had his mother and his wife fighting with him in the middle. David and Linda asked for this rabbi's help. In response, he said to Linda, "You're hearing this voice in your head that tells you to stand up for yourself. But if you were to calm down for just 1 minute, you'd start to hear a different voice. This voice would say, 'Now's not the time. We could talk about my frustrations when my husband gets home. Until then, I don't want to put greater pressure on him. As for your mother-in-law, it may seem as if she's criticizing you, but if you put yourself in her shoes and listen to what your inner voice has to say, you would judge her less harshly. You would see that she loves her son and her grandchildren, and that she's expressing that love the only way she knows how. But your voice won't let you, and that's because you're listening not to your true inner self, but to an ugly defensive voice that's drowning out your authentic, inspired and conscientious self. You have to hear a different voice, and the voice should say, 'Who do you want to be? Do you want to be the kind of person who puts pressure on your husband when there's nothing he can do and he's 3,000 miles away? I'm not asking you to be a doormat. Be firm, and your husband should stand up for you. But start by trying to understand your mother-in-law. Go see her. Compliment her. Learn why she is the way she is by talking to her. The reason you're upset is not because your mother-in-law is a threat to you, nor is it because your husband doesn't stand up for you. The reason you're upset is that you know you're not being true to yourself. And it's all because you're not listening to your inner voice. There are far more dangerous voices out there as well. If a designer can implant a voice inside your head that tells you you're not pretty enough, you'll spend all of your money on expensive clothing. If an author can get you to see your own obesity whenever you look in the mirror, then you'll buy his diet book. And if a candidate for office can get you to hear his voice about the nation's tax revenues going down the toilet without uncontrolled spending, then he can convince you to pull a lever for him in the voting booth. Yet in each of these cases, you have heard an external voice that did not inspire but instead made you feel bad about yourself. On the author's TV show, Shalom in the Home, he worked with a 17-year-old girl from New Jersey who was battling life-threatening anorexia. She weighed less than 100 pounds, yet she continued to starve herself. She told the author that she listened to an inner voice she called Ed for eating disorder. She thought that voice was her friend. It took him many days to convince her that Ed was no pal but rather her assailant and potential killer. To facilitate that awareness, his producers and himself decided to conduct an experiment. They dressed him up with a stocking over his face so that he looked like a guy who robs a liquor store. He walked into her living room like that, and she asked him what he was supposed to be. In a low baritone, he told her that he was Ed. He spoke softly, telling her that her figure and facial features could always be improved on. He told her she was becoming heavier and less attractive every time she ate. She began to associate the voice with his frightening appearance. She realized that Ed was not her voice but rather an outside voice produced by a culture that reduces women to a collection of stick, thin body parts. Each of us has an Ed whom we listen to, and we're susceptible to his negativity for many reasons. Foremost among them is the absence of adequate love in our childhood. Our lives are so busy, our parents are so harassed, that something is bound to give. It's usually quality time with family that suffers, and the author doesn't think that any of us are being given that nurturing love we really need in order to feel adequate. As we strive to make up for the deficiency, we lead lives that are so frenetic, we never have time to hear ourselves think. So the author wants you to ignore negative inner conversations such as these. To counter them, listen to your voice of conscience, of inspiration, and of self. The true inner voice, your own voice that serves as a bulwark against all external forces, comes directly from those three sources that he's previously mentioned. In a conversation with ourselves, content is all important. It's not enough to talk to ourselves to no purpose. What we say matters. The pep talks we give ourselves will determine the people we become. If we have wrong conversations with ourselves, we risk becoming people we don't want to be. In this book, the author has assembled the 10 most important conversations you can have with yourself and included a few exercises or self-talks in each chapter. You can use them to reshape your character, drown out the voices of self-defense, resentment and jealousy, and inspire yourself with what your soul has to say. The author has divided these 10 conversations into 3 groups based on the corresponding inner voices. You must consult inspiration, conscience, and inner self. First, you will speak to yourself with the voice of inspiration, which motivates you to be a greater person than you ever believed possible. With this voice, you will learn to embrace hunger, choose love over attention, use your ego and ambition, and defy our society's culture of death. Next, you will learn to speak with your voice of conscience, choosing to do what is right over what comes easiest. You will comprehend how to do your way to feeling. See yourself in the third person to obtain a truer picture of yourself, and live as a blessing rather than as a burden. In the end, you will speak with the deepest voice of all, the voice of your inner self, channeling the essence of who you really are. With this voice, you will remind yourself of the importance of struggle, of always asking, and of knowing your own individual gift above all. These 10 conversations and the voices they spring from speak to our character on the deepest level. At the end of each chapter, the author also listed questions you can ask yourself to spur further self-talk. When answering them, use them as a guide for future action and development. These conversations aren't supposed to be a script you read from. Only by looking deep within and locating your trust in the voices can you most forward and live a better life. For the sake of brevity, the author refers to these conversations by the term self-talk throughout the book. The self-talks that you have will help you develop a voice uniquely informed by morality, inspiration, and your own innermost authenticity. Now is the time. Knock, knock. It's your conscience. Listen to what it has to say. Knock, knock. It's your conscience. Listen to what it has to say. Part 1. The voice of inspiration. Okay, we hope that you have enjoyed this video. If you have, please give us a like, subscribe to our channel, add your comments below the video. We'll get back to you on those as soon as possible. And go share this video with all your family, friends, neighbours and others in inspiration. Be the inspiration for them to be more positive, better themselves, succeed spiritually, etc. Mentally, physically and spiritually. By clicking on the link underneath this video and going to have a look at the book yourself. Perhaps you can do a recording like us of the most important parts of it and apply it throughout your day. We're just going to have a quick look at the rest of the book. So that's what we suggest. Rather than us reading you the whole book and you falling asleep, you can go and have a look at the book yourself. Okay, you may have to become a free member. It doesn't cost you anything, only your email address and a password, so that you can borrow the book for an hour, and then you have to book for another hour, use it for another hour, etc., etc. Until it's not available. If someone else jumps in after you, and you have to wait around. But yeah, you can read it as many times as you like just by simply clicking on the top button. It's blue, right? Once you get in there, borrow for an hour. You can borrow again, borrow again, borrow again. Yeah, so you go find that book, join up. It's free. Doesn't cost you a red cent. Doesn't cost you nothing. There's no tricks or deceit. Okay, it's all free, and you can read through this book and maybe make some recordings of the important parts that he suggests. Okay, so he's saying embrace hunger in this particular chapter. He goes into scriptural stuff. Yeah. And so on. And he gives lots and lots of different examples from people that he's counselled. So that's what we suggest. Give us a like, add your comments below, subscribe to our channel, and share this with all your family, friends and others. And don't forget to click on the link below to read this book. Maybe do a recording of it for yourself.